Like I said, I think everybody's back to work and not able to stay up late with us, but we are live. Here we are. Hey,
You know what? If Rhett or a couple of those guys jump in and we're already going, it's going to really throw them for a loop.
It will.
And then, they'll just have to be earlier on other weeks.
And I already saw if they do join, it's going to be a disaster because I posted that we had Law's Whiskey House and all the White Claw jokes started pouring in. So,
Oh, wow. I would have never made that weird jump, but yeah. I'm sure, Al, you probably get a lot of people offering you White Claw these days, huh?
My daughter bought me a T-shirt with something to the extent of there's no drinking claws when you got laws or something.
There you go.
As a good college student, they're very well aware of those seltzer catastrophes to the business.
Hey, Cody. Good to see you.
Hey, Cody.
We started a little early tonight, so you still got first chat. So you're good to go. I think we're good to go. So I think we're just gonna fire it up. Everybody, let me make sure I start recording though. Don't want to have any mishaps there again. All right, you guys all set?
I am ready. I am always ready. I have been ready since first call. Roll.
All right, here we go.
I don't know why I do that.
It's got something to do with fingerling potatoes.
Okay. Yeah.
We're not going there tonight. All right, here we go.
At the sound of the tone, the official "We Like Drinking" time will be 5 o'clock. Commence consumption.
This week on episode 311 of the We Like Drinking podcast, we'll be discussing wheat, malt, rye, and how they all come together at Law's Whiskey House. So crack open that beer, uncork that wine, and let's get drinking! Oh my goodness, listeners, we have got so much booze in the house to get through tonight. You better just pop some popcorn and sit back because the rails, they might be coming off early. The rails? I didn't know the rails came off, but whatever.
I'm doing that mechanical plastic desk bird dance.
Excellent. So let's start off by saying cheers, my podcast drinking friends, and welcome to Happy Hour 311 of your favorite award-winning topical wine and beer education podcast focusing on fun.
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 That Harley out outside my window just now. That was crazy.
I didn't hear it. Thankfully, I didn't hear it. Yes, folks, we have Law's Whiskey with us tonight. We have 5 whiskeys in front of us. We're only gonna drink 2 of them though, but know that we are going to be getting to all of them over the course of the next few weeks. So make sure you never miss another episode of our brand of drinking fun by visiting welikeDrinking.com/subscribe. The chat is blowing up. Everybody is there. I can't throw everybody that's up there. They are already commenting on the rails being off, the wheels being off, everything that's going wrong. Everybody's been freaking out that we started early. It's just it's chaos.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, it's a podcast. You listen whenever you want, but those of you watching live, as you ought to do every Tuesday night at 7:30-ish Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, just go ahead and visit us at welikeDrinking.com/show and get in with those good times live.
That's right. So tonight we are joined by our usual panel members we have our California Sustainable Wine Growing Ambassador and recovering wine blogger, Jeff Solomon.
Hey, shalom, everybody. Happy New Year.
Our commercial brewer and snake wrangler, John Ruyak.
I'm not doing much of either of those lately, but I'm here.
Excellent. And I am your host and certified specialist of wine, Jeff Eccles. Now, our guests this week is Al Laws and James Coons from Laws Whiskey House. Laws Whiskey House is based out of Denver, Colorado, and was established in 2011. They are a purpose-driven grain-to-bottle whiskey distillery using the traditional methods of open-air on-grain fermentation. Laws Whiskey features high-altitude grown American mother grain and mountain spring water while aging in 53-gallon charred American oak barrels. Please help us welcome Al Laws and James Coons. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Right on. Nice introduction.
Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. This is one of those shows because I'm in Colorado Springs and they're in Denver. I really wish we could be together to do this episode, but luckily the technology allows us to come together and drink. So here we are. Welcome to the show, guys.
And I just need to say right now that Eccles, during non-pandemic times, has some other amazing excuses as to why he never visits anyone.
They only ever see me in this box right here. That's as far as I ever go.
I've been in the box.
You can find Laws on their website at lawswhiskeyhouse.com and on Instagram at Laws Whiskey. Good Instagram, lots of beautiful shots. Beautiful facility you guys have up there. It's amazing looking.
Thanks. Yeah. Now we've just started to expand it. We're about halfway done. We kicked in about May back into our new kind of layout, and we have about 3 or 4 other projects for 21 to get us even bigger and in a much better production aspects, as well as moving a whole bunch of things in our barrel warehouse as we get very, very close to full.
Excellent. So James is going to be even more busy.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yep. All those barrels are coming in at a steady rate. So I'm looking for space anywhere I can get it.
Excellent. So I did want to touch on, like I said, we have the 5 whiskeys here. So we have this 4-pack of small bottles. Now, is this something that people can purchase, or is this just a sample set that you send out to media?
No, it's actually one of our seasonal products for around this time of year and around Father's Day and graduation. So it's an easy way to kind of get a broad kind of sampling of all of our top quality whiskeys and kind of get you into the mindset of, grain matters and here's the differences in the grain flavors. But it's like, about 400 milliliters total for 100 mils. It's a great price point for that. So it's a thing we've come up with a few years ago, and it's doing really well.
Yeah, I love it. And so you've got the rye, you've got the wheat, you've got the malt, and you've got the 4 grain in this presentation, right?
Correct.
And then we also happen to have so explain to us what this is. This is your port cask, but this is kind of like a series. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll let James talk to that. It's our experiential series.
Yeah, so that's the port finished bourbon. It aged for 3 years in new charred American white oak to make it straight bourbon, and then sat for another 2 years in port casks.
Amazing.
Oh, wow.
And some of us have tried this one.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I'll just say it took a lot to let these bottles make it to this show. So thank you for these guys. We're looking forward. Now, for tonight, we're going to taste the rye whiskey and the port barrel aged whiskey as well. Now, is anybody drinking anything else, or are we just doing the whiskeys tonight? Jeff Solomon?
I do have I don't know if this is a chaser or if this is an aperitif. I do have the Firestone Walker Mind Haze IPA, just because you know me, I love some hazy beers.
You do love the hazies.
You know what it is? I was honestly just kind of hungry, and I'm like, I can't eat on the show. That would be unprofessional. So I have a little beer here while I'm waiting for the wonderful tasting notes of this Beautiful bourbon and rye.
What do you mean? What do you mean you don't eat on the show? You eat every other week on the show.
John, do you have anything else to drink?
I've got my standard San Pellegrino as a palate cleanser.
James, anything for you?
Yeah, I've got this Denver municipal water right here, highly filtered. It's pretty tasty. It's good.
Excellent. Al?
Shockingly, I don't have anything in front of me other than Earl Grey tea because
Nice.
I haven't really left the desk yet today. So although it's at the house, I still haven't left my chair. So it's been a long day.
Okay, I hear you. I am drinking some fine H2O as well.
I do think I have a bottle of cast strength rye here on the shelf, though. Yeah.
Ooh.
So that might get opened here as we get into it. I'm all going to get that right now.
All right. He's going to go grab that. So, James, which one should we start with?
I think you should start with the rye.
Yeah, I was okay. All right.
Yeah.
So,
It's one of our regular offerings. So, we like to ease people in with, any of those whiskeys in the 4-pack. But I would definitely start with the rye. Rye and bourbon are definitely our top sellers.
so what should we be expecting on this one?
So to me, our rye is it's so unique. It's so earthy. It really tastes like the place where it was grown. We have a very close relationship with our farmers down at Colorado Malting Company in Alamosa, and they like to say that this whiskey in particular tastes like the farm. And I couldn't agree more with them. So it's really earthy. It's spicy. It's got, some pretty prominent notes of orange. Just overall, just a nice round whiskey. There's nothing quite like it, though. I mean, I've never tasted a whiskey that's like our Laws Rye.
We're looking at a mash bill of 95.5 in this stuff. This will still be not. We now make it 100%, and that's what now goes in our bottles. And of that 95% rye, half of it's malted rye, and half of it's raw rye. And it's all SLV. It's an heirloom variety, a varietal, and it's all grown there about 7,800 feet above sea level, in the valley. So it tastes, and it's in an area with sandy soil, and what stresses it out. It produces, amazing flavors that normally go into the rye, like the heat, the peppery notes in our rye are more like Serrano, more vegetative than they are like cracked pepper.
Yeah.
And then the orange, super orange, nice and salty.
Yeah. And James, the earth notes that you were talking about, it's really present, especially on the nose. Like there's almost like some barnyard, like hay kind of notes to it. It's really funky and really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably the most prominent note that I notice every time I drink it, and something that keeps me going back to the rye all the time. Love it.
I'm still getting over COVID. I was diagnosed right after Thanksgiving, but I definitely get on the nose the fig.
Oh yeah,
it's mentioned in the notes, and the toffee, of course, and then the palate bomb that is that peppery rye stuff, and the orange and the salted toffee is just it's killer.
Yeah. I got to tell you something. The people are speaking. Usually I wait until the end of the interview to tell people how to run their business, but this is an opportunity. You've got to strike while the iron is hot. Laws Whiskey House rye whiskey. So good. You could even taste it with a COVID infection. I got to tell you something. How magical is this? I'm tasting this for the first time as Al is talking about these orange notes and the saltiness on this. Like, it is insane how good this is. Like, I know that there's people who are like, oh yeah, I like rye. I drink rye. You've never had this before. This is fantastic. And I do want to follow up on something because we're definitely more noobs when it comes to talking spirits on this show as opposed to the other beverages that we're so passionate about. And so I do have to ask, I mean, there's a lot of things I want to ask, but you mentioned that it's about 50-50 raw rye as opposed to malted rye.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit on what might be a typical bill for something like that in other houses? And like, it's probably not as common to have raw rye. Am I correct?
No, mostly it's raw rye.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's mostly raw rye and then malt for conversion, and usually enzymes and some bacteria stuff they will use to get the the starch to convert to sugar. The malted ryes are less because it's more expensive, first of all, and it's hard to malt rye. It doesn't really have a lot of diacetic. James can speak to that, but it's having both, you'll get this nice homogenized sweetness and a nice smooth finish. Plus, you'll get all the things James talking about from the ground. It's in the raw rye that really is what rye's about.
This is, I'm so stoked on. I was having a bad day. I was walking around the house singing that song that they used to play on that one show where people sang when they got kicked off. That one show about having a bad day. I was singing that to myself on the way in, and this just changed everything. This is
right.
Awesome. Yeah,
like I poured a really small taste, and now I'm pouring another really small taste. Before we move on,
I poured a big taste. This is so different than the ryes that I've had before, particularly that New Riff rye seemed so, I don't know, I don't want to say four-dimensional, but certainly there's a lot of stuff going on in here, and it's really cool. I live just down the road a piece, down 285. The San Luis Valley is a really interesting place.
Yeah.
It's the largest intermountain valley on the planet.
Well, like we like to talk about the grains and what they bring to the table, and we love to talk about terroir in that. And people love to say that in wine, and we believe Provence terroir exists in whiskey too. If you're using grains that aren't grown for yield but grown for flavor, and all these varietals that we're using in the bourbon and in the rye are heirloom variety. Corn is corn. We do use different corns different years, but it is all grown for us in Colorado. But the white wheat that we're using instead of red wheat for the bourbon and for our wheat whiskey, and then the rye is SLV, and it's only grown in that valley in the rest of the world, right? It's been bred to work there in that environment.
So I know this kind of goes into the interview portion. We're not really quite there yet. So the corn probably comes from the Front Range. I was reading your interview with the Cody family on your website.
Yeah.
And I had done some research on heirloom grains and rye in particular, but I'd imagine the corn comes from the Front Range because of the temperature differences. You want warm nights for corn as opposed to cool nights for rye. Would I be right in saying that, or?
Yeah, it's coming from near the Kansas border in Burlington from Whiskey Sister Supply.
Okay.
That grows the corn for us.
So we'll talk about some other stuff, but it is interesting that what happens with heirloom rye and what happens to go into that is pretty interesting. So we'll talk about that a little.
yeah,
just like grape varietal, the varietal of the rye puts those flavors in it, and it's a very distinctive rye, no doubt. And in comparing to rye from larger producers where they're using corn in it as well, up to 30-35% corn to get their yield up, it's not going to be the same thing. We're trying for that distinctive 100% grain flavor, unadulterated in our single grain whiskeys.
I know that you're supposed to drink this stuff, but I'm just going to sit here and smell it for a while.
Wow. And I do have to say, it looks like our buddy JM watching live right now, and I'm stoked to see you, JM. Saying that he's tried it, and it's truly just on a different level compared to other ryes that he's had. So that's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move on to the port?
Yeah, definitely.
Any argument for me?
Woo! Happy New Year.
Okay, so this was, you said it's aged 3 years in regular charred barrels, and then I'm sorry, it was another 2 years.
2 years in port casks, and our what we used to call the special finish series has now come into its own as the experiential series, and it started as taking a straight whiskey at 2 or 3 years, finishing it in a cask, whether that's wine or a brandy cognac cask or something like that. And we built up such a big stock of these secondary barrels that we're actually able to go longer and longer into secondary aging, as opposed to, some distilleries will just do a 6-month finish in a barrel, which is great. But we're kind of taking it even further and further. So this ended up sticking around in the barrel for, a lot longer, which actually just added layers of depth and dimension, which I'm really happy with it.
So much depth. I mean, even on the nose, it's just, the first initial blast it's just port. It's like a port. It almost gets to like a Madeira, like it's something like super aged and old, and then you kind of get the whiskey notes that start kind of percolating up through it. So just the nose is it's a lot of fun.
And I'll tell you what, like Eccles, flavor wise, he hit a lot of the things that I was noticing as well. But here's a dimension I don't think I've ever used before, but I think it's so apropos here. This is the first ever time I've stuck my nose into a glass and referred to the aroma as being viscous. Like I almost feel like they're like these gloopy particles just grabbing onto my nose hairs, and I got a lot of them, grabbing onto my nose hairs and just holding that flavor there. Like it's almost like imagine that feeling, everybody, of like walking into a sauna, like that just blast and like that difference of air, but it's just all like nutty and caramelized goodness. Like this is, I mean, it's one of those ones, and I do this with wine sometimes. I almost don't even want to drink it. I'm having so much fun smelling it. This is, amazing balls.
We gotta get in our face holes, Jeff. So.
I know. Okay.
The base here is our 4-grain bourbon. So it's 3-year-old 4-grain bourbon, which is like a 60% corn, 20% wheat, 10 rye, 10 malt combination, right?
That is so
aged in all 53-gallon barrels. So we only use big barrels. And then James hand selects these things for secondary finishing. And all these experiences that we've laid out are really like they're thought through. We don't just throw them in barrels. Hey, we can get these barrels, throw them in. We're going for something here. And that jammy finish of the port really goes nicely with some of the other fruit notes that are in our bourbon.
Just the warmth in the back of your palate, but then all the flavors like on the sides, and it's so smooth, guys. Wow.
It's
wow.
Shocking how much of the port it is absorbed, because it's just like on the nose, like the initial blast is like port, and then just whiskey it doesn't clean it out because that port flavor just stays there. It's the gloopiness that Jeff Solomon
and you know what it is on the palate, and forgive me because it's gonna go in a weird direction, but it's all love that comes back here. I was at the dentist a couple of weeks ago, and they finished off with like the fluoride treatment that sticks to your teeth. Like this is that, except you love it. And nobody's going to tell you that you can't take another sip for like 30 minutes. Like this is, oh man. Yeah, that goopiness, it's there. It's all up in my face hole, my nose holes. It's hanging on those hairs up there, all those hairs. And this is just lovely. It's a pillow that's inside of my mouth that I don't want to spit out. It's okay. If I choke on this and die, I died a happy man. This is wonderful.
that'll boost viewership, I imagine. So
So this port finish is this fall's release. So it's out there now, and it's out there across the country, and it will be gone soon. And then we haven't picked what the next thing is, but in our tasting room, we have stuff that's finished in like Calvados barrels, as well as, what are the other ones, James? There's quite a list, right?
We've had Sauterne barrel finished rye. What else? We've had, that's all that comes to mind. Oh, actually, we've had Cabernet barrel finished. Bourbon. I recently laid down some Madeira barrels. Those are going to have to sit for a couple of years. Some Curacao barrels for finishing both bourbon and rye. So pretty excited about those. We've released a really fun one that we have going on. It's just kind of a continual exchange. There's a local honey maker not too far away from Denver up in Longmont, and we send them a couple barrels every 6 months. They age honey in there for 6 months and then drain the barrels and send the barrels back, and I put whiskey back in them. So we've done a honey barrel bourbon, and I've got probably 4 of those going right now, and I'm about to get 2 more of them going pretty soon. So pretty excited.
Remind me to make sure our buddy Billy Belt at Lost Cause Meadery listens to this. I think he's drowning in a pool of his own drool right now. That sounds awesome.
And these are like cherry blossom honey, right? Cherry or apple blossom honey, more than likely.
Wow, that sounds good.
I mean, it's Longmont. It was.
Yeah,
these are a one-time.
I think.
These are a one-time release, right? You release these once, and then it's on to the next thing, correct?
Typically, we have a series of them. So the port finish was 2 different kind of releases within a month of 2 barrels and 4 barrels, right, James? There's 6 barrel total of that.
Yep.
That was enough for the market.
Yep. And
then next fall, we have our cognac finish that's coming out, and it's a whole Solera process. So we have, I'll let James, it's his stuff. He's got it sitting there. Tell him about the foeder and.
Yeah. So what I do is take 2 years straight bourbon out of the 53-gallon new barrels. I'll take anywhere between 10 and 20 of them at a time, marry them together, adjust the proof if I need to, and then I put those into cognac casks. And those are anywhere between 350 and 400 liter barrels from France. Many times they're still wet with cognac inside. They go through a recoupering process, so they're actually in amazing shape when I get them. And so that bourbon will sit there for 1 more year in the large barrels, and then an additional year in a 60 hectoliter foeder that is that's going to hold up to about I want to say 29 or so American oak barrels. So the overall process is going to take about 4 years from just the whiskey going into the initial barrel till the time that it may see a glass bottle. So it goes through a pretty lengthy secondary aging process, and as Al said, it's sort of a modified Solera system. So we'll take about half the volume out of that foeder and add 15 more barrels on top of it and let it age for another year. So it's a long process.
So our first release will be next fall. We hope. We get our salespeople bugging us about us all the time. We're like, we don't know if it's ready yet. We don't know. So we're gonna have to decide then. They're like, no. You can't decide that. I'm like, yeah, we're not gonna release it if it isn't where we want it. So
no whiskey before it's time. Oh, someone's used that already.
That's amazing. And yeah, we've kind of gone from the tasting to the interview, and it's kind of been blended all over the place, which is amazing. And we're going to keep it going. But we do have this important little bit that we like to call
wine, beer, spirit or pop culture reference, this is where I am going to give the crew and our lovely viewers watching live every Tuesday night at 7:30-ish Pacific, as you ought to do at welikedrinking.com/show. I'm going to give them a term, and they're going to let me know, is this a wine term, a beer term, a spirit term, or some sort of pop culture reference? This is an easy one, or is it? The word this week is Omaha. Is Omaha a wine, beer, spirit, or pop culture reference? John Ruyak.
I'm not sure I can answer yet. The port finish is still stuck to my teeth. And I don't want to spit it out. I'm not gonna. I swallowed it. Omaha. Well, we all know Peyton Manning yelling Omaha in the shotgun, right? He actually yelled Buffalo a couple of times.
He did.
This guy. Hey, congratulations, Bills Mafia.
There you go. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Let's break a table. Omaha. This has got to be some sort of trick question, right? I don't think we need to have you spell it. I'm going to guess it's O-M-A-H-A. Is the O capitalized?
It is capitalized. I mean, that's how I wrote it down.
Omaha. You know what? I'm going to say this is a wine reference, and the Omaha has some sort of new viticultural area that's just been classified as an AVA.
John Ruyak says it's wine after the new Omaha Inn.
Or it could be that
AVA.
it could be a pop culture reference in that this is episode 311 and the group 311 is from Omaha, isn't it? Not? Is it not?
Well, which answer are you going with, John?
Both. You do it all the time.
Okay, that's very cute. James, Omaha. Ever heard of it?
Omaha Beach.
So you're going to call this a beer term then?
I'm gonna say, I'm going to say it's a beer term, but I have no idea how or why it would apply to beer.
Okay, James says that it is a beer term. Not exactly sure why. Jeff Eccles.
Man, you got me this week. I have no idea where you're coming from with this one. So I am going to say that this is a spirit term because we have some spirit guests on the show tonight, and I am going to say that this is a name of some kind of grain or something like that that could be used in distillation.
Okay, so Jeff Eccles says that this is a spirit term in reference to some sort of like herbs or spices that are used in distillation. Al, does Omaha mean anything to you?
Counting Crows, pop sensation hit. I'm going pop culture on this.
Okay. So we've got Al with pop culture, Eccles with spirit, James with beer, Ruyak with wine, or pop culture reference. I will say that it is a pop culture reference. And I will also hearken back, as John did, to the episode number, which is 311. And God damn it, if John Ruyak didn't know that off the top of his head, I would say that John is the winner. However, what this also means is John loves one of the shittiest, most overrated bands of all time. Congratulations, John Ruyak. Omaha. is a pop culture reference, and apparently John Ruyak is down.
The only reason I know that is because Eric, the guy who started Angry Goats Brewery with me and a bunch of other guys, is from Omaha, and he constantly reminded us that he used to party with those guys out in the field with a keg of beer.
I don't think that says anything great about your buddy Eric then. So sorry, bud.
Cody said it was an acronym that meant our minds are hurt always on this podcast.
Hey, true enough.
And JM says, of course, Jeff Solomon, you worked in a record store. So,
Well, yeah, of course.
yeah, we all knew that. All right, guys. So again,
Where's the 311, bro? It's
Get
in that pile of rejected used product over there. Go ahead.
So again, folks, if you don't remember, we are talking to Laws Whiskey House out of Denver, Colorado. We're talking to Al Laws and James Coons from said whiskey house. All right, guys. Like I said, we've been kind of going in and out of the interview and tastings here, but we'll get into a little bit more of it. So Al, I think I want to start with you here. What on earth made you decide to go from oil and gas finance to whiskey?
It's a lifelong, I could give you I'm passionate about it, cliche thing. If you're not passionate, you shouldn't even start this shit. So it literally comes down to an obsession. So from a very young age, I just drink whiskey. And at some point you can come to this, wouldn't it be great if you could make something that has all the elements, all these amazing whiskeys that you've had? And I don't know. I used to have like 600 different ones in the house. COVID has taken that down below 400. So, I don't know if I'll be able to build that back up, but it's a library that's open to our whole production team. And we try to try as many things as we like because we want to understand flavor. And for me, it started like that. And it's like, I didn't want to die at my desk. And this was important to me. Like everything that we do is important. And it's not just me, it's my entire village. And everyone is as passionate and obsessed about whiskey as I am, from our tasting room people to our production people, to our sales people, even to our accountants.
Perfect. That's how you want it, right?
Yeah.
I got super excited about talking to you guys when I started finding out that you really looked at terroir, something we talked about earlier, terroir in the grains that you grow and how those get to the whiskey. Was that something that you knew you wanted going into it, or was it something that you learned as you started production?
It's something, it wouldn't have started like that. It started to become that once you tasted the differences. And it became, out of the gate, it was more, I would like to make this out of inputs that came from around us, right? Because whiskey comes from somewhere, whether it's Scotland, whether it's Ireland, or Canadian, or all these things are like, they come from somewhere. And I think there's a lot to, the geography of where something comes from adds to its taste, its culture, its flavor. So it was about local grains at that point. And then we looked into, one of the very first craft, I think it is the very, very first craft malting company in the whole country was in our state. And our interaction with them early on changed everything for me when I accidentally ran out of a portion of the 4-grain recipe of how to go out to a homebrew store to get a couple bags of wheat malt. And I'm like, well, what do you got? And they, we have this, and we have this local one called this. It's like nondescript bag with a stamp on it. It said Colorado malting. I'm like, well, I'll take those. And it changed everything, gentlemen. Like the smell in the building, the mash was different. And that was it. From that point on, we looked to source all those grains. They didn't have corn, and corn came a few years later, but it makes a huge difference.
I can tell you my experience with Colorado Malting Company in that there was Dwayne, I think, still has a homebrew shop down on Powers, down by the strip club down there, Jeff.
Okay, yeah.
right? And he's got Colorado. Is Colorado Mountain Brewery or he grew out of that? But I go into, before I was a professional brewer, go in and get grain to brew beer, and Dwayne, I walk in and Dwayne's like, "You got to try this." What is it? Colorado 2-row? What do you mean Colorado 2-row? It's malted right down there in Alamosa. I'm like, what? And the beer was just phenomenal. And for about 6 months, all the beer I brewed was with this Colorado 2-row malted barley. And then New Belgium got a hold of it and contracted everything. And you can't get that stuff anymore except for a little bit here and there. So, I know of the company.
You can, John.
You can get it? All right.
We have
That
priority.
stuff is just phenomenal.
We definitely have priority. So,
yeah.
And a lot of the grains we use are raw, so it's not a big deal on their capacity to malt. So
let me extend that. We talked about rye before, and I was looking up some information on heirloom ryes. And I read this story about Horton rye varietal that came out of Cornell, and it started with 10 seeds, 10. So they germinated, like not all of the seeds germinated. It's an heirloom low yield variety, and it took years for them to get to where they could even take it outside because they didn't want to risk losing this varietal. But to get down to it is that rye, it takes about 1 million seeds to seed an acre of farmland for rye, and it takes about an acre to produce a barrel of whiskey. And that, to me, that's just mind-blowing. And the fact it's interesting because I guess rye's got a lot of problems. It's very promiscuous. It interbreeds very easily with other varietals. So getting a pure strain is pretty difficult, and it falls over easily. I guess it's top heavy. It's called lodging. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was something I learned new today. So I guess because the San Luis Valley is so enclosed. I mean, it's 80 miles long and 30 or 40 miles wide, but there's just like 14,000 foot high mountains that almost completely surround it. So is there a specific name for this rye variety, or is this just called San Luis Valley rye? Is that what it is?
It's SLV, so San Luis Valley. Yeah, it's distinctive to there, and it's not the Cody's aren't the only one that grow it in the valley, but people didn't grow it for the longest time because of what you said. It's like a weed, right, to some degree, and wheat and barley were more important. And then as you move back towards flavors, and even in bread and things like that, it's better to have these type of grains. And so we have what James, 600,000 pounds of it to use from this fall's harvest.
Oh yeah, easily. Wow. Yeah, it's half a circle.
Yeah.
And it's half of a grain circle, those 300-foot booms that go around and water stuff. So you got half of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's 600,000 pounds. That's interesting to know that's what comes out of one of those things. That's cool.
Yeah, and it varies year to year, but as it's something you have to get familiar with, and the Codys are very good at this. And the reason we have a 95.5 version of the rye to start was we couldn't get the conversion capacity out of the malted rye, and they've got better at it. I think we've had good weather for it over the last few years, and it's a winter rye, like it's already in the ground, and sometimes it even comes up around this time of year if it's warm enough, and the snow covers it up, and by the time August rolls around, we're taking it off the field, or we're not.
Usually we're down there during harvest every season. They throw a big party for all their clients, and so we have the pleasure of and the honor of attending these parties. But it's the harvest, so it's a ton of fun, and they actually have the combine running through the field the day of, which is always fun.
So I want to go 180 degrees, and I'll let these other guys ask some questions. But
thanks, John.
All right,
appreciate it.
Sorry, I don't get to nerd out a lot. But just you talked about how you grew into this, and so are you? I guess the question is, are you distilling? I guess James, distilling conceptually, like you have an idea of what you want from a flavor profile, then you go out to find the casks to do that, or is it something that's just experimental, experiential, or is there some sort of mad idea about how this all works?
That's a great question. It all starts with our grain bills. We have an idea of what we want to build flavor wise in the spirit, and then we go from there. On my end of things, since I'm sort of closer to the end of the line, a couple degrees separated from the distillery, I get to have these mad ideas and usually run it by Al, or Al has some mad ideas and runs it by me. And we just go from there. And we have the luxury of, over 3,000 barrels of whiskey, and we can dedicate a few here and there to trying, some kind of special wine finish or something like that. There's a lot of flexibility built into what we do, and that's on purpose. But something that's really fun that I come across regularly are these experiments that we've done in the distillery years ago. So, for example, I recently was tasting some barrels, actually today, of different yeast experiments. So we tried a couple different strains of yeast almost 3 years ago. And so it's been really fun tasting those as they're coming to maturity. And so we age those side by side with our normal house strain of yeast or spirit produced from that house strain of yeast. So we played around with some Scotch yeast and some Belgian ale yeast and stuff like that. And it's usually in pretty small quantities. But we'll have a fun time aging those, and then whenever they come to maturity, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, then we can release those as experientials. Or if they're nothing particularly unique or interesting, those will just go into a batch. So a lot of flexibility built into what we do. I can't even begin to tell you how many experiments we've done just by tweaking, changing one variable along the line somewhere. We always take extensive notes on that from the distillery, from mash cooking, fermentation, distillation, barrel aging, all the way into batch selection and marriage. There's a lot going on, and we try not to change too many variables at one time. So
one or two, or you can't keep track of them.
exactly.
Yeah, John, the idea is that everything's purposeful. Like we don't throw stuff at the wall and go, hey, maybe this will work. We don't do that. So as James described, he has a null hypothesis of why he's going to put it in that Madeira barrel or those new, Laird's apple brandy barrels where we're going to go for something. So he's starting with here's what I want to do and here's why. And that's how we make everybody who again, the production team who wants to come with an idea, they need to bring that to us.
Yeah, and that's how we build beers at Lizard Tail, is we talk about it, say what do we want to try to accomplish with this next thing that we're trying to develop, and then build a way to get there from there. And that's cool. It's good to have. It's nice to have an idea and have the experience to deliver that, and then when it all comes together, you're like,
yeah. Well, that's how the cognac project started. So it started with a couple barrels that turned out really well, and they sold really well. And we got a lot of like, hey, we'll do more of this. And so James and Sam and I and we just got together. What do we want to do? What would be cool? What would be really cool is to have a never-ending supply of this that continually evolves and changes. And because that's what we want. We don't want to drink the same thing every day for the rest of our lives. We want to have it evolve. And hey, it's really good right now. Now we'll put it in glass. And this modified Solera is the right word. I like that word or that phrase. And that's what we're trying. So it'll continually evolve, and people go, how old is this? We don't know. At that point, we don't know. There's so many layers on it, we won't know. But we do think we're using cognac technique here, basically just blending over time to see if we can't continually evolve towards or iterate our way to perfection.
Yeah, solid.
I'd imagine and obviously, as Al was kind of saying this, James, as you're experimenting, you don't want to, just throw random shit at the wall and see what's happening. But I would still imagine that throughout this process, there are some pretty crazy results that might have come back at you and like really surprised you. And I'm wondering, could you reflect on any like one or two surprises, maybe like something that you did and you're like, I never realized that 1 + 2 is going to equal 5 here. Is there anything like that that's ever happened with you?
James, I want you to tell them the story of the rye mash that we recharred the barrel.
Oh yeah. So we've got what we call the rechar. We've only released 1 barrel of this. This was a group effort, and as Al was saying, this is the production team sits down and talks about these things before we even make it happen. But a few years ago, we had the bright idea of taking a empty rye barrel, so it had aged rye for 3 years, taking some straw from the rye field of actual rye, stuffing it in the barrel, and burning it. So we took the head off the barrel, rechar the inside by burning rye straw, and it added this really beautiful, like delicate smoke flavor, this earth, this amazing, just weird and deliciousness. We put new spirit in there. So it wasn't the finish. It was brand new spirit off the still that went in there. So it came out kind of a nice between a pale yellow and the deep amber that we normally get in our straight ryes. That was so successful and people loved it so much that we went ahead and did that with 6 more barrels. Only 5 of them actually survived the firing, the recharring. And so those are aging some rye spirit right now as we speak. So that's a good example of something that was just kind of a crazy idea that we made it happen and it worked really well.
Nice.
That's awesome.
I do have to wonder this too. I mean, this is me, almost wish casting here, but I'd imagine you're taking copious notes along the way, keeping track of all these different barrels. Have you ever like rounded a corner and you got to a barrel and like there's no label on it and you're like, wait a second, what happened? I mean, I know this is ours. I know there's something, there's liquid in there. What the fuck is this? Have you ever had a happy accident like that?
Yeah.
Or if it did, and I understand, coworkers on the show, did you ever just write a label on it real quick and just kind of make it up?
Actually, we've come across a few barrels that we don't quite know what they are. A good example would be a 3-grain bourbon that we will be releasing soon through a liquor store here in Denver. We knew that it was a 3-grain bourbon, but had no idea what exactly went into it. We have a handful of barrels that we're going to end up calling it an American whiskey probably. But years ago when we would have sort of the remnants of our 4-grain bourbon production or whatever, have some grains left over that, we needed to finish up that round of production and kind of get rid of those grains before the new grains were coming in. We would throw them together, make a batch, see what happens. And, like you're saying, you kind of you find a barrel and you're like, what the heck is that? And you got to go back in the records and kind of look up who wrote that recipe, what went into it, how was it distilled? And then, just taste through them and see what happened. But so far, I haven't found anything that I dislike.
Oh, that's great.
There are only barrels, there are no bad barrels of whiskey. There are just some barrels that require more aging, and that's what we're doing.
To your question, Jeff, we label things with a number, so they're all labeled. But if it's something different, we just put an X behind it. So we don't know what the X means necessarily. So we have to go find what the X means when we find these barrels. And, I think the one James is talking about, he's being modest in this, it was a very metal kind of release. We had 12 barrels of what we call the Devil's Whiskey, and it's mixed. There's no corn in it, and it's 666 pounds in the mash bill. So it's kind of like, little Iron Maiden stuff there, and it's good, and it's American whiskey. It doesn't, it's not, it's really good. It's just, and it's about 6 years, coming on 6 years old. So it's
nice. I love the fun that you guys have with everything too. We do have a question from the chat in between all the heckling and jokes and everything else going on. Some questions have come up. So JBB says, their bottle design is beautiful. Can't wait to taste this booze. How's the distribution across the nation?
Pretty good. Like, we're clearly a Colorado company, so this is our home base, and this is where we carry the moat. Colorado gets a disproportionate amount of love.
Yes.
But we're in about 15 other states, so a lot of the unique stuff doesn't go beyond Colorado. It might only go to a couple other states, but we're in like Georgia and Illinois and Texas and California and Arkansas and Missouri, a little bit in Tennessee, New Jersey. So we have pretty decent. You can get our products, and the new breakdown of or enlightening changes to laws where we might be able to ship it or use third parties to get it to other states. Maybe that's a small little positive comes out of COVID for liquor laws. Maybe that comes apart, and we can start to, have things like clubs where you can order from us directly. We would like to see that and engage people on that level. But yeah, we are available in most states.
And is that in most of the states, especially as you go further east, is it going to be primarily your top four and less of the small batch stuff?
Yeah, it's going to be the batch, which is like 3.5-year-old bourbon and 4-year-old rye, and then our 6-year-old bonded rye and bourbons. Those are the 4 lead for us, and those they'll lead. But the other stuff will go there too. We have an ample amount of like our release, our special release this coming spring, which is always released in the spring, is the wheat whiskey. This year it's almost 6 years old, so it's a bonded. We'll call it bonded 5, but it's like a month away from being 6. And in the fall, it's the malt whiskey, and it's also a bonded whiskey, and it's around the same age, 5-6 years old. So those but they come out seasonally, and we have enough of those to expand our harvest of those to put in other markets if we see the demand. But we're still small, right? We're a small company, and we're patient too. Like, we didn't sell one drop of whiskey for 3.5 years. We made so. Yeah.
There's so many questions, and we're running out of time. So I'll give each of us one more question. I'm torn on which one to go with, but I'll go with this one. This is going to be your 10th year of production, correct?
Coming up.
So when did you brew your first batch of whiskey for Laws, and why was that an important date for you to start on?
We were born on the 4th of July.
Yes.
And then as a Canadian, this date is important to me. As an immigrant Canadian to this country, it was an important date. And like my mentor, my Yoda, who's in the Hall of Fame of the Bourbon Hall of Fame in Kentucky, his name is Bill Friel. He and I, that's the first day we filled the cooker and fired her up, and it spurted out the top of the cooker like lava, and all the things that you could imagine happened. But by the end of that week, we had stuff to distill, and that's when we started. And that's our anniversary every year. And every year we pour some from barrel 1 for people that come through the tours. This year we couldn't do that because of COVID, but that barrel number 1 will be 10 years old this July. And that's going to be, and we'll never sell those things. Those are just, to pour for people and to give out at charities and things like that. That's the only thing it's for. And it's phenomenal.
Amazing. Jeff Solomon.
Earlier, Al, you made a reference to, maybe dying at your desk. And I'm just wondering, if you were dead at your desk, which bottle of fine Laws whiskey would you want to have next to you?
Ooh, that's like picking your children. It's tough.
Hey, I've got 3 and I've got a favorite.
So my favorite thing we've put out remains the 4-year-old bonded whiskey, which we no longer put out. It's out there. We have maybe 10 or 15 cases. That's my favorite thing. That's what I would want to go. It's nice and fruity and grain forward, and then it's starting to get the cool wood elements to it. And it's different than, say, Kentucky. Our 6-year-old stuff is as good as anything from other parts of the country, including Kentucky. But it's not as once you get into the wood influence, it gets less and less differentiated. So that will be it. The 4-year-old bib, and it's again, there's still some of it available, but maybe we'll put it out as a nostalgia point. It's or move the batch towards that.
All right, John.
So, when you brew, and I brewed a Mexican craft lager, and everybody's like clamoring for it, and it takes 2 weeks in fermentation and 30 days in cold crash to lager it, and a couple of days in the bright tank, and then carbonate it, and then keg it, and then everybody's like walking down the hallways. When are you going to get that in the keg so we can put it on tap? I said, it'll get there when it gets there, but that's only 6 weeks. How hard was it to learn to do something that takes 4 years?
Oh, there's a question. I got tattoos on my arm, me and patience, and it's like me. It's a gargoyle leaning on a barrel, looking very pensive, and I got that a year in. And I came from a place of something happens and someone needs to know your view of it in 5 minutes, and it better be 99% accurate. That was my life for 15 years. Try to put that into a lower gear. It was very tough. But I learned from my mentor and my Yoda, and I also learned from all the people in the village. It's just like we have a lot of really cool and calm people, and that kind of atmosphere brings you down into like, hey, this is okay to wait. We don't have to be in a hurry. And in starting the company, in the research, and I was a research person, so I did a lot of it. It takes like 20 years to establish a whiskey distillery, because that's all we don't make vodka or gin. We don't make that. We make aged products, and it takes 20 years, and we're like halfway now. We're almost halfway. So to like keep going back to that touchstone and say, it doesn't have to happen now. Be conservative, do the right thing, care about what you put out, and everything else. Get the right partners financially, and it'll get there.
Is it a little easier now that there's things that come out on a regular basis as opposed to waiting for that first drop that took 2 to 3 years?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll tell you. Here's the story. We thought we would launch in March of 2014. And we're all gearing up for that. And then it wasn't ready. We're like, I don't like this. We're not putting this out. And then all of a sudden, we don't have any money. Because we had a budget and we didn't have any money. So I had to go find some money to get us through the rest of the year. And then we kept tasting every month or so. And it turned in September, and we're like, it's ready. So in October, we were able to go to market for our first time. But everything's stressful. Everyone, you're in beer, but everyone thinks it's glamorous. This is really hard work. Ask James. This is hard work. We get up every day. We grind through this, but we love it. So it's a different type of work, right? There's a pleasure to it, but it's still hard. And if it wasn't hard, I don't think it would be as rewarding.
Mm-hmm. For sure. That's a great way, guys, unless you have one more question that's come up. Otherwise, I think that's a great way to end.
I mean, have you ever thought about branding a whiskey after your favorite shitty band from Omaha, Nebraska?
I hadn't thought of that, but I'm going to write that down. Hold
on. If 311 hits the jukebox, it must be...
Last call.
Last call.
John, at some point, you're going to figure out how to unmute yourself when there's
music.
music.
I did that one time, and you guys yelled at me. Because I started saying it before the video went away.
I don't think that's true. But yes, it's last call. Time to clean house and lock the doors. You know what we do here, folks, we're looking for a little bit of help from you. John Ruyak, if the folks want to follow us on the social media platforms, how can they do so?
There's a couple places to do that. The first one's Twitter, and that's We Like Drinking 1, the numeral 1. There's Instagram, and that's just straight up We Like Drinking. And then the tavern where everybody hangs out and talks about what they're drinking and what they're eating and nice pictures. And that's the tavern on Facebook, WeLikeDrinking.com/tavern. Send us an invite request and we'll say yes.
That we like to do. James or Al, again, where are the best places to find Laws Whiskey on the social media platforms?
Oh my God, you guys have asked me the question. I don't know that.
It's Law's Whiskey House.
It's Laws Whiskey on Instagram and lawswhiskeyhouse.com on the internet. Sorry about that, guys. Jeff Solomon, if the folks have some thoughts about our podcast, where can they go to leave a scathing review?
Look, those of you watching live, as you ought to do every Tuesday night around 7:30-ish Pacific at weLikeDrinking.com/show. Why don't you mash that like and subscribe button? But those of you that download with fidelity every single week to your phones, take a look at your podcasting app that you're using. Look at us. Go ahead and scroll down. If you see an empty 5 stars, fill that mofo up. And where it says, hey, leave a comment, actually do what they tell you to do and leave a comment. Eccles may read it on the show. We might track you down. We might, depending, good review, bad review. If it's a good review, you might get a sticker.
Maybe even some coasters.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
And if you've done all that and you just want to do more, consider becoming a patron of the show by visit weLikeDrinking.com/pledge and find out for as little as $1 a month how you can help keep our show going. P.S. I broke into the 4-grain bourbon.
I'm just wondering.
I've got a problem.
Is anybody squatting on weLikeDrinking.com/lemon scented pledge?
I don't think so, but thanks for the thought. You can also find the show notes for this episode with all the links to the stories or mentions we had at weLikeDrinking.com/episodes. All right, folks, that was a lot of fun drinking. That was a fantastic interview, but it's the time where I get to say, okay, panel, let's take one last trip around this table and get some final thoughts before we shut off the lights. John Ruyak.
Well, my final thoughts are not going to smell like lemon scented pledge. I've got something that grinds my gears. And you know what that is? That's people who don't bring in their trash cans after the trash day. So, trash pickup is Monday in my neighborhood. And it's the best day to walk my dogs because, public domain, right in the trash can out there, pick it up. I don't have to carry it all the way home. Walking 3 miles with a couple of bags of dog poop is not great. But you know what? If you don't bring them in Monday, you're going to get a surprise in your can on Tuesday morning. Bring in your damn trash cans, people.
Fair enough. Jeff Solomon.
You're the guy I need to talk to about
Put in your trash can, Solomon.
Literally putting shit in my trash can. Ruyak only told part of the story about how difficult it is to cultivate rye. He talked about how promiscuous it is. He didn't talk about how you keep cross-pollination from happening. True story, those 10 seeds, the way they kept them from cross-pollinating was the dude who did it worked on the set of the very first Naked Gun movie, and he took home one of those giant things.
God.
James, any final thoughts before we let you go?
Gosh, that's a tough one to follow.
Don't be
Get out there and drink some whiskey, everybody.
There you go. Al, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Nah, just play safe. And yeah, there is no bad whiskey. There's just whiskey that you don't prefer as much at a particular time.
Very true. And I think a lot of people would enjoy.
I would prefer this.
Oh,
a
I
lot.
prefer this. The only problem I'm going to have is how do I clean this glass after the coating, the lacquer that it just went inside? Oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, and I'll just end it by saying, James and Al, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for getting some of your product. And thank you so much for working so hard and taking so much time to make sure what you're producing and releasing is so damn delicious. This stuff is amazing. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And with that, I'll say thanks again for joining us at the We Like Drinking podcast.
Where you'll never drink alone. I wonder how many of the viewers punch their televisions.
Holy crap! Like I gotta say, I was like, I don't know what the chat. I think the chat's gonna be pretty calm tonight. Good. I couldn't even try to keep up with them. Oh damn, Jeff McKinney, best guest this year.
Hey. Wow.
Yeah.
4 days, we got it done.
Thank you, Jeff McKinney. Wait a second. They're the first. Hey, you.
Cody says, keep your rye in your pants.
Hey, Eccles, real quick question for you.
Yeah.
So now when I have this computer that's on no operating system.
Hold on. I doubt that doesn't sound good. We'll talk.
I don't, how do I get the free AOL installation disc to hook that back up?
Okay. Before we get into the help desk issues for Jeff Solomon, we're going to end the broadcast. So viewers, thank you all so much for joining up on Tuesday, January 5th. That was awesome seeing y'all. Even Jim out east joined us all. So love y'all. Thank you guys. And we'll see you next week. It's going to be a wine episode next week. So stay tuned. Bye.
Bye, YouTube.